you're not managing and processing emotions along with the physical process, then you're working against yourself, because anyone that has physical success in nutrition and in those aspects, they have had to master some sort of emotional stability.
You're listening to the Warrior Rulebook Podcast with me, Monique Harmon. I love helping people express themselves, protect their peace, and be confident in being them. You may also know me as Pretty Nikki, who started her online journey as a modest fashion blogger. Now I'm an entrepreneur. You'll see through my experiences and the experiences of others that change is possible, improvement is tasty, and meaningful connection is transformational. Come on, share your story with me. The stories and information presented in my podcast is not intended to take the place of medical advice from a healthcare professional. So any exercise, diet, health-related, mental health matters vary from person to person. So nothing in the podcast will be construed or used as a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Any action taken based on the contents of this podcast or the resources is solely at your own discretion, risk, and liability. So this podcast is simply here to be encouraging, but you should definitely seek a healthcare professional for additional help. Now let's get on to the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Warrior Rulebook Podcast. Today, I am sitting with Elijah Estevez, who is a singer, an entrepreneur, as well as a real estate investor and YouTuber. So we are going to be talking today about emotional intelligence and the importance of it and how you can increase it. So welcome to the show, Elijah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a super privilege and a great honor.
Of course. So start us off by telling us what emotional intelligence is.
For sure. So it can be interpreted in different ways, but I believe emotional intelligence is the ability not just to understand, but to perceive and detect and break down and explain one's emotional state and emotional state of being in different scenarios. So that's just my brief version of that.
Okay. And so can you tell us why is it important? Because sometimes it can be hard to want to process your emotions, especially if you're in a disagreement with somebody or you get let down, let's say like something, you don't get accepted for a job, or just a really hard obstacle occurs. And some people, everybody, they respond differently, like where some people, they may just shut down completely, they don't want to talk to anybody, or maybe they just it's very visible, like that they're angry, and you kind of see it in everything that is happening. So why, in your opinion, do you even think it is important to process those emotions, or do you think it's okay just to like suppress it and move on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing that we have to recognize as people is that emotions dictate health, and it dictates your overall health as a human being, and everything that we do should be geared towards self-development, self-progress, self-elevation, and health, right? So just like how you have to process your emotions, you have to process food. So certain things that we know aren't good to digest and aren't easily digested, typically for your health, you want to stay away from stuff like that. So the same thing goes with emotion, because that's connected to your mental. So with emotional process comes good health, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and otherwise. So when you're in sticky situations where you're either upset or you're dealing with a hard situation, knowing how to manage your emotional stress, emotional pressure, whatever it is pertaining to your emotions, knowing how to manage that will not just help you resolve situations easier, and deal with people easier, but it'll help your actual physical body, and mental state to be better, so you're not going through life extremely weighed down and come across hurdles like depression and anxiety and things like that. So it's a very, very crucial aspect to our being that people skip over a lot. We see so many commercials about, you have this meal plan and lose weight and feel better. So they're all trying to connect it to self-development and health. But a lot of times when we deal with our emotions, we kind of usually put that to the side as if that does not affect our physical bodies. Because, good example, a person can know, okay, I'm obese. So what am I going to do to fix that for my health? They go, okay, I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to eat this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to exercise this, that amount. They put a whole physical nutritional diet in place. Now, they don't take a step back and look at, okay, how do I deal with my emotions? Because along with that physical journey come emotional processes, right? Where you have to go over those, oh, I don't feel like it. Oh, they're saying this about me. Oh, I look like this, or oh, I'm not getting progress. Along your physical journey comes emotional baggage. So if you're not managing and processing emotions along with the physical process, then you're working against yourself, because anyone that has physical success in nutrition and in those aspects, they have had to master some sort of emotional stability in that aspect to get through it.
Quality Care Properties specializes in providing solutions to homeowners looking for a fair cash offer on their house. Pay no closing costs or fees, no headaches. You can submit your inquiry on the website and start getting paid at www.qualitycareproperties.com. Again, that's www.qualitycareproperties.com.
So I think that it's definitely something overlooked, but if you know how to manage emotions properly, and managing emotions, I just want to say, definitely does not mean you always have the right solutions, but it means you have a good process that works for you personally, because what may help you manage your emotions may not help me. Like some people, they may just need a second to themselves, whether when they get into a situation, and then they can cool off and come back and be calculated and have fair assessments and fair judgment. That may not work for me. I may not need a few hours to myself. I may need to sit down and just right off the bat have a conversation, and then pull the answers and express and verbally tell you what was going on at that very moment. Because some people need to go aside, then come to you, and some people may want to come directly, immediately to process that situation. So everybody needs emotional management, proper emotional management, but everybody has to figure out what works for them, particularly, just like how with physical exercise and process, everybody's exercise and regimen is not the same, because everybody's physical anatomy just requires different routine and different diet to get to that physical goal that they're trying to reach. Yeah.
So, how have you grown in terms of managing your emotions? Do you notice anything different, or has it kind of been consistent the past few years?
Yeah, I would say personally, I've seen a lot of development in different areas. There's definitely areas in the past few years I didn't realize I needed emotional development. And then there are areas that I realized that I still needed emotional development that I thought I had. And this is due to sometimes when you don't have certain experiences that kind of press certain areas of yourself, you don't realize it. Because, I mean, you can't really know that you struggle with emotional issues in certain areas unless something comes to challenge those things. So with certain experiences that I have had previously that I haven't had in years past, made me go, okay, wow, okay, I'm getting frustrated every time this comes to me. You know what I'm saying? Every time I deal with A, B, C, and D, this is how I'm reacting. And because I'm at least at the fundamental level, I have self-awareness. And that has taught me in those past situations, okay, I'm seeing patterns. Because if I personally did not switch on my brain to analyze patterns about myself and do like a humble self evaluation type of thing, then you can go through experiences and miss the opportunities to even notice the patterns, and then you have to notice them later. So it's taking you a longer time to mature emotionally. But thankfully, and by the grace of God, I've been able to notice, okay, with this triggers me, and I'm not reacting at that time the way I know I should or the way I thought I could have. And of course, with those particular situations, I'm learning, of course, what makes me tick. So I'm learning. I've learned that, okay, to avoid myself to get triggered and respond in those negative ways while I'm going through the process of practicing my emotional management, I have to avoid it as best as I can. Because yes, you will develop emotional stability through those experiences, because you can't become strong in an area if you're not challenged by it. But that being said, you also don't want to keep jumping in. If you drive over a pothole and you see a bunch of deep pots ahead of you, you're not doing yourself a favor by just keep going over them, right? So, but you would do better to try to avoid it as best as you can, but not lose your senses just because you may have not went around one, because it's normal to go through frustrations along the journey of emotional management, but it's more advantageous to avoid it if you can, because life is just going to bring it to you. So in those scenarios, I try my best to, okay, say, if this is making me tick, okay, go, don't run right into it. Make sure I put certain things in place where I can minimize the chances of me responding negatively. And I would say, secondly, I've learned to really take slower breaths and not think so quickly in those moments, because when you think so quickly, you are irrational and you're not hearing. Because for me personally, and if everybody has different scenarios, but one of the biggest problems that will challenge your emotional ability to process emotions is people, whether it is yourself, because we're not dealing with, you're not going to argue with a robot, Alexa. We're dealing with people. So typically when you're dealing with emotional issues, it involves another person to some degree. And so for my particular case, I've learned, okay, take a deep breath and listen with the intent to find a way to get a lesson out of this for my emotional management. Because, and I just want to say this, most people, and I say this so many times to my friends, that most people, they listen not with the intent to understand, or not with the intent to grow from that experience for themselves, but they listen with the intent to find an opportunity to become the bigger person in the conversation. And that's a very, 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 very immature way to approach it, especially if you care about your personal emotional development, because we can't control another person's process, but we can control ours. So I've learned to, okay, say, what am I seeing in this situation? And 9 times out of 10, a lot of times I know who's right in the conversation or who's right in the situation, but I don't use that. I keep that to myself and try to observe in the situation how I can keep my peace, not force the rightness of what I am in the conversation or in the situation, knowing that sometimes you can't reach the other side of the aisle, while using that opportunity to become the kind of person that doesn't respond like how you used to situations, where instead of going, like, what, who you think you are, instead of doing that, using the opportunity to go, all right, I understand. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Because that has much more power than going rage mode. And simultaneously, with those types of responses, the peaceful response that I demonstrated, you don't want to be the kind of person that goes into bottle it up and put it to the side, because there's a way to manage your emotions and not respond recklessly, but also literally dispersing and letting it go, like letting it go, not even on a hook, but like letting it go and letting it be gone. You know what I'm saying? Where you can see the person, you can see the situation, and not even feel a hint of the anger that you had before. And that takes time to get to that point. But the particular experiences I've had have taught me that, Elijah, and one thing that helps me along my emotional management and process is life is too short. Life is too short to be fussing over the smallest things, which is a lot of times what disrupts our emotional management and causes us to be very, very, very unhappy. And not just unhappy, but unhealthy. Because if you walk around with a chip on your shoulder, as they say, or if you walk around constantly frustrated about things, you won't be the best version of yourself. And I've been able to understand that. I've been able to not only see when I'm not managing my emotions the right way, or the way I think I'm managing it, I can tell it's not working based upon the result of how I feel and how my life is turning out. Because a lot of times people think that they're good, even watching this, they may think, well, I don't need, I know how to, I'm 45, I'm 50, I know how to manage my emotions. You may not know how to, but you may think you do. So you may think what you have been doing is working because people don't complain, or you just feel fine, quote unquote. But the reality is it doesn't take a Gen Z 19-year-old to realize that emotions have to be managed. And 9 times out of 10, if you were not taught that, you're not doing it the right way. You're doing it your way. And most times, your way, if it's wrong, it's going to manifest and hurt other people's lives a lot of times, and you may not even know it. So these are things that have been helping me. Is definitely taking a short, a slow breath, so I'm not quick to go, oh, in the situations where I can just take a breath, calm myself physically, because when you can calm yourself physically and find things that you enjoy, that's my last point on that particular topic. Find something this is why I believe every human being should have a hobby. Every human being should have a hobby. If you don't have a hobby and you just work 9 to 5, you're like a zombie. And a hobby, some people say, oh, some things take little to no money. A hobby really can cost you nothing compared to like some products that may be out there, because a hobby is something that you find even the smallest piece in. If you find something that gives, even if it's Sudoku, crossword puzzles, crocheting, music, drawing, doing origami, something that you find, playing sports, whatever it is that you find a little bit of, you feel like if you feel like you in it, 9 times out of 10, that's your best hobby to fall back on in those moments while you're developing your emotional stability. That'll help you kind of deal with some situations that you can't resolve in that moment, because some stresses are like a have a timeline. So what are you going to do? You're just going to simmer on the stress? No, sometimes it's best to get that bike and just go for a ride, go for a walk, get off the smartphone, do something to sort of distract yourself from how your emotions is trying to make you feel, and recuperate and tap into that comfort in that hobby that'll kind of calm you down. If it's not just breathing, that'll help you along the process. Because just like how if you go from eating junk food to trying to be healthy, it takes time to make your body healthy. Because the reality is, if you've been eating very, 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 very unhealthy for years, eating corn dogs, roast beef, all that stuff for decades, you're not going to be healthy because you ate a salad one day. You're going to have a lot to catch up on. You're going to have a lot of consistent healthy meals to be qualified as a healthy person. So, the same thing goes with emotional situations, where you need constant emotional experiences of management under your belt, on your resume, so to speak, to qualify as emotionally stable, because it just, these things take a time. So food, emotional, mental, they all come under a health umbrella that I hope everybody can really come to an understanding of, that it's very vital. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I definitely like what you said about like having to make sure that you do things that you do enjoy because um sometimes when your emotions get out of whack, it's kind of like I know for me, I say for me, like it's like I don't even want to experience anything happy because I'm just like I'm upset inside, you know? So it's like sometimes it's hard to even just do everyday things like eating and all of that because again, everybody processes their emotions differently. Some people they're able to be upset and they still do what they have to do because they have to do what they have to do. And then there's other people where they just completely like you said, they need a break. They need to take a break, but they also have to remind themselves like, hey, I need to, you know, I need to eat. I need to do my work and all of that. So I definitely get that. So we took a test for to see where we are with our emotional intelligence, and I want to talk about that now. So you can go first with what your results were and just kind of explain like what it is.
For sure, for sure. So my results, they gave us a criteria of I believe 15%, I guess, to 75%. And my result lied at 59. It says that according to the website, I'm an emotionally intelligent person. Whoa, you know, trying. You have great relationships, and you probably find that people approach you for advice, and that's I've experienced that since I was very young, you know, throughout school. Ironic. However, when so many people admire your people skills, it's easy to lose sight of your own needs. Yes, I can definitely relate to that. Trying to help everybody, and it's like you're left with no chips in your bag, you know? So, read our tips. Researchers have found that emotionally intelligent people often have great leadership potential, realizing this potential by seeking opportunities to improve even further. And that's also something that I think is so spot on with me personally. Not that I've had the most leadership roles in my entire life. I am a young man. However, that is something that I've desired to do for a long time. I love to help and I love to teach what I know. And I love to, you know, I can recall back in my school days, whenever there was like an extracurricular activity, I would take initiative. And a lot of times I would kind of fill in the blanks where other leadership maybe didn't. That's something I desire to do in the future, where I can assume some sort of leadership role to somebody of a niche that I can relate to. So that's that assessment was quite accurate, I must say.
Yes, yes. And I got the same result too. So, what are some ways that people can make sure that they help themselves when they're dealing with their emotions? Because it says like how some people lose sight of helping them their own selves. So, like, then that's where they suffer. So, what do you think could be done to just like tighten that area?
I would definitely say this circles back to the biggest one of the biggest issues that we have on the planet in our entire lifespan, people. You have to first figure out, okay, the people that you associate with, are they a distraction to you in the sense of pulling your attention away from you on a constant basis? Because yeah, you can zoom in on yourself every now and then, but the consistency of your zooming in is relevant. So if you're zooming in on yourself on a Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're zooming in on others for their situations, you're not going to grow at the rate that you should. And you may end up at the end of your life not putting in the quantity of zooming in on yourself. So if you can follow what I'm saying. So I would say first analyze if, you know, some people don't have a people issue where they really don't converse with a lot of people. So, but if you do, I would say analyze that and see if you're pouring too much into other people, and leaving yourself dry. Second, I would say take some moments to be still, especially in this society where I was thinking about the other day, every time you turn around, there's an ad. I'm driving on the freeway, there's billboards that's like, one billboard says, "Hey, you," and then the other one says, "Got another," like, it's just like ads everywhere, on your phone, on every platform, you listen to music on YouTube, ads. So we live in such a go society where your attention is being fought for. And so if you don't kind of take that moment to be silent and to evoke silence around you, you won't even be able to hear your own thoughts. And so you want to be able to know, where do you stand emotionally? What makes you react? What is the definition of the reaction that you have to things? So if you don't take that time to be still, I would say you're not going to be able to identify the emotional baggage you may have or emotional discrepancies you may have. So definitely analyzing how much you're giving to others in terms of emotional, in terms of all those kinds of things, in comparison to yourself, and analyze how away is your attention from yourself, from all these things that we're consuming. And then I would also say, sometimes talk to yourself, say when you're in those situations, because the best learning opportunity to find out where you lack emotionally is in those hot moments, you have to stay tuned to yourself and to moments. A lot of people, when they get into arguments, when they get into fussing and things like that with people, they're so involved in the action that they're not seeing the scenario. Think about it. There's, like, some people say, there's memes out there that talk about how we're all just floating on this big rock. And it's true. We're all just floating on a rock here, and so sometimes you have to think like that. When you're in those hot situations where you're going back and forth with your friend or going back and forth with somebody, and it's emotionally charged, in those moments, and I've done this, in those moments, you can talk to yourself in quick micro moments and just go, wait, as they're going like, think to yourself, we're all insects floating on a rock. I mean, we are. We're like insects, if anything, because we're all just little people on a floating rock in the universe. So this is relevant, because when you think of things like this, you will understand, okay, let me step out of this scenario while I'm in it. You can do that. You can step out of a conversation. You can step outside of an argument while you're in an argument. And notice, when you step outside of an argument while you're in the middle of it, most times you won't have much to say, because you're going to yourself, when this is over, I'm just gonna chill. You know what I'm saying? And while you're outside of the argument, while you're in it, you're able to not just think that way. You're able to see how you're processing it. You're able to see, okay, like your question was, okay, she's frustrating me. He's frustrating me. Okay, I feel like punching him in the face. Okay, after this, I want to, whatever it is that you maybe, let's say you're struggling with something, maybe emotionally, and you react to those situations by picking up a cigarette or something. In those moments, you get to see yourself in reaction time before you did the thing. So in those moments that you step out of the conversation while in it, you're going, oh, while I'm dealing with this, I can feel the desire to this, to that, to this, to that, to this, to that. You know what I'm saying? So you're seeing, and you can make a mental list of how you're responding emotionally. And then you can create for lack of words, a bio of your emotional state over time, because you're aware in those moments. I'm telling you, awareness is so vital to self, because people get into arguments, and it just puzzles me how people can be so invested in the conversation, and most times they're not saying anything relevant or correct, but they're so invested in going back and forth, arguing, and making you feel this way, and manipulating your words, and being wrong, but then going, okay, well, you didn't have to, they're so methodical about the argument that they're they deleted reality. They deleted the fact that they're floating on a rock. And as we say in church, you're dust. You're literally a human dust that won't be missed after a million years. You just won't. And so I would say as well, consider yourself very, very small. I'm telling you, think about the floating rock. It'll help you in those moments to go from off in your brain emotionally to on. And when you're on emotionally in the midst of a heated situation, then that's when you really start to see all the atoms and nucleus and all those microorganisms of the emotional reaction you're getting out of those moments. So those are some things that I would say to help, have that awareness.
And I think that also helps as well to articulate, like if somebody does ask you, like what is wrong or why you feel that way, once you go through that process that you mentioned, it's a lot easier to be able to articulate it, because sometimes when you are going through certain things, or you're just kind of like not there, right, and you don't really, sometimes you may not know what it is at that time. Like if something like literally just happened, you're just trying to process it, and it takes going through sometimes it takes going through that same type of pain, or that same kind of, maybe even the same kind of situation where you feel as though like, wow, I fell into this again. I got to get back up. And you're like, okay, so now I know, because this happens, now I know how to respond to it. Even though there's still some like ill feelings there or something like that, you just kind of know at that point, like what the problem is. So like you said, being aware of what the issue is, that helps a lot, because sometimes I think what's worse is like not knowing that something is going on, or not knowing what the effects are. And you're just like, you're kind of missing something, and you're just trying to understand. Like it's like every action that takes place, every conversation that takes place, it evokes a different response. Like there's a different response between someone not knowing that they are doing something, and they encounter negative emotions from somebody else, and then there's like having full awareness as to what's going on, and they're going to react differently. So I just think that knowing what the process is, knowing all of the details, being able to become familiar and like just really just be in tune with your emotions, that really does increase your emotional IQ.
Sure, for sure.
I hope I'm saying that right.
No, I've created so many words in this one conversation that doesn't exist probably. So I get it.
Yeah. What do you think will happen if someone decides not to deal with their emotions?
I feel like the most crucial thing that a person should be aware of, if they don't deal with it and they just put it to the side, is they'll destroy themselves. Number one, destroy their loved ones, and waste their potential. I say that because, well, the first reason I say you'll destroy yourself, because you'll live an entirely unfulfilled life, and you'll be miserable. That's just really that's the best way I can put it. It's not rocket science to that. Because when you destroy yourself, you're not obviously physically killing yourself, but you could end up getting to that point of suicide, because emotional distress is connected to the mental state, which is connected to the actions your body displays. So sometimes some people, they do live this life and have emotional baggage and go to the grave and that's it. But there are people that go, and not just young people, because it's not like, young people, we just suicidal. No. You can be extreme if depending upon the person and sometimes the circumstances, sometimes the right circumstances and issues can cause a person to make extreme decisions and destroy themselves physically because of the emotional baggage. And there are some unspeakable traumas you question why, well, how could a human go through, which if those things go undealt with, they could destroy themselves physically. And the reason why I say destroy yourself overall is because you can become delusional about who you are, what your purpose is. You can live a life that pleases others. You can desire to be something that you really shouldn't, and you really don't have to be. And you could end up using your entire life suppressing what you love, going after who you love. You can live a life that's fabricated and you suffer in silence your entire life. That's self-destruction. Because there are people that are fine with being unhappy for the sake of peace, quote unquote. And yes, this life has many issues and it won't get easier with, but you don't have, if you can help it, you don't have to live like that. And so that's why I say you will destroy yourself. Secondly, you will destroy the people you love. The reason why I point that out particularly is because when you don't deal with emotional baggage, you can destroy generations. And exhibit A, men. And I'm using this example because I am a man. With a lot of men, and I wrote an article about this in school. You typically hear, and this is Black, white, Hispanic. I'm not convinced it's a Black community thing. I'm really not. So I just like to say men. A lot of men are traditionally, they teach their sons, which is why I said the generational damage. Men don't cry. Men don't, aren't, that's soft. You're not supposed to be expressive. That's how women are. They cry. They're weak, quote unquote, right? Because they connect weakness with crying and crying with weakness. So just as an example, among many other things outside of men, that's something that will destroy your loved ones, right? Which can be your sons, your fathers, your cousins, your neighbors. So that destruction comes in the form of delusion, because the reality is a man that's a real man, just putting it that way, and a solid man that is well-rounded knows where crying has its place. Just for that example, they know when to cry, why they're crying, what result, who they're crying, towards, with, around. They know where it has its place, but they haven't removed it from the scenario. So those are men that are emotionally intelligent and emotionally stable. So the destruction comes in where you may think you're teaching your sons how to be a real man by not crying and expressing themselves. But then now you have a scenario where your son gets married and now his wife is yelling at him saying, I don't understand why you won't open up. I don't understand why you're not communicating. I don't understand why you're not this, why you're not that. I can't get through to. She's going to therapist. She's going to her pastor going, I don't know why I can't get through to him. Not realizing if she could go through a time machine and see him from an external perspective growing up and seeing his father say to him, men don't cry. Men don't express themselves. That's weak. The father didn't know or didn't consider he's destroying his son, because now his son is becoming problematic to his wife. And he didn't even know that would happen, because when you don't deal with your emotions, and whatever it is that the father may have dealt with, whether he was raised that way, he may have went through issues that's the resolve he came to, because he wasn't taught how to manage his emotions, or he wasn't even taught that was relevant. So he may have been taught, men work out, we go to the gym, get fit, healthy, stay healthy. He may have been taught that. But there are men that exclude their mental health, that they exclude their emotional health. They say, if I get my body right, I'll be all right. So that may have been the scenario. And so he may have not have intentionally, but he did by destroying, we're using that phrase, his son. And now there's fractures, right? And now his son thinks the same way, thinks, oh, I'm a man. No, I don't know, like, just he's talking now, he's dealing with his wife like that because, maybe the wife deals with her emotions, and that's a real thing. Typically with women, they're very expressive and let's talk and communicate, And so with that particular man, in the traditional sense, that's not in his nature, because that's not what was taught to him. And that destruction was passed down. And lo and behold, what do you think is going to happen with the son of that son? The same exact thing. He's going to teach his son, you a man, be a man. Don't cry. And now we just have destruction after destruction after destruction. And this is a generational thing. And all these people love each other. So my point is this: whether it's men, whether it's crying, whatever the situation is, you, by not managing your emotions, you will destroy the people you love. If you have a sibling that you love and you're not being considerate to how they feel, or you're so emotionally out of tune with yourself that you say things that hurt them. But there are people that will say things like, good example, my sister won't say certain things to me because she knows it will hurt me. You get what I'm saying? And I know that it will hurt me. So we had that communication. So she knows since we were young, okay, this is sensitive for Elijah. I'm not going to poke fun at that. So we don't have those hurdles, you know what I'm saying? And so she's not emotionally, ignorant to the point where she had, like, good example. She has said, I've said, let me use myself as an example. I've said things before to people, not using my intelligence at that time, but it burdens me after I said it, because I'm connected to my emotions, and I'm not like kind of evil where I can like make fun of someone. Let's say there's someone that lost their loved one. I'm not going to go, oh, you're better off now, and then walk away and not feel nothing. So because I'm in tune with my emotions as a man, I will know that was out of line. And so I actually have that response. But there are people that make fun of the dead, and they're emotionally dead. So they don't respond to things like that. So that's why, you can destroy the people you love with emotional ignorance and not taking care of your emotional state. And I believe my third point was, I forgot. Yeah, so I figured that would happen. It was a long shot. But so yeah, first, you can destroy yourself. Second, you can destroy others. And I'll just make up a third since I forgot my first point. You will stay the same, and you will never reach your best self, and you will constantly be living a life that you really shouldn't, because we live in this life and we're going through stuff, but I believe personally that we should all strive to be the best version of ourselves. And to do that comes along emotional stability, because that way you know what you like, what you don't like, what makes you tick, and you become an actualized person, not a person that's kind of like, oh, you're in a circle of people, they make you feel like trash, and you just go, yeah, and you stay around them. But when you become actualized and emotionally intelligent and aware, you begin a mental list of what you tolerate, what you don't tolerate, who you don't tolerate, because you're protecting your emotional state. So if you're not aware of these things, I can't tell you how many people I've seen tolerate people that don't like them just because they want to be liked. And so if they were aware of if they put their emotions in a relevant place, then they would regard themselves differently, and they would be an actualized adult and a person at that time. So yeah, you would destroy yourself, destroy your loved ones, and not reach your best potential on this rock that we're floating on. So that's I think.
Yeah, it's definitely, I learned that in college when I was going to college, that if you keep sitting on something, like you're feeling a certain type of way, you don't talk about it, then it's like, what can you do? If, like, say for example, somebody does something that annoys you and you just keep going along with it and stuff, like you never say anything, like nothing. How are they going to know that is a problem? And so I had to learn to start being like, yeah, like if something like really, really bothers me, like I'm defiantly still that person. Like people do things that are annoying and I'll overlook it quicker than I will vocalize and be like, yeah, that's kind of annoying to me.
Right.
Because I guess in a way I pick my battles. Because I'm just like, I don't want to have to deal with everything. Like,
Right.
I could be in a fight every single day,
Yeah.
if I really paid attention to everything that happened. And not only that, but it's like we're taught not to take heed to everything that happens. Like, even if something is bothersome
Right.
or has the potential to be bothersome, move on. You have bigger
Mhm.
fish to fry, as that saying is. And when people say that, I get hungry, but yeah.
Very true.
So, but I had to learn that, like, if something's like really huge and it's really bothering me, that I need to say something. And so that's what I have learned to do. And it's also hard too when I feel like my emotions are blocked.
Right.
Like, it's like, well, what's the point of even saying anything? So it's like, I feel
Right.
as though, like, if you express yourself a couple of times and nothing has changed, then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
go
And
on to the next thing.
100%. And you brought up a good point really quick. I just want to add before you continue. Uh, I'm learning, and I've learned that expressing yourself in situations that may fall on deaf ears, in those scenarios where you pick those battles, first and foremost, it's for you versus for them. Because I'm the kind of person I'd rather try to say something if it's appropriate and if the battle calls for it. Because even if potentially you may win a brother, you may gain a sister, whatever, but a lot of, just like how they say forgiveness sometimes is for you, not necessarily always for them, because a person cannot forgive you, but number one, you can escape hell. Number two, you can have peace in your life because you can let the thing go a little bit easier when you ask for forgiveness. And so the same thing goes with those particular situations. Sometimes just at least getting it out there can give you a little bit of freedom, even if nothing comes of it. So yeah.
Yeah. So, how, from your perspective, how has dealing with your emotions, how has that developed you as a person overall?
Yeah. So it's definitely helped me to learn about myself in so many ways. It's helped me to learn myself in ways that are advantageous to to being a business owner, to certain things I want to do with my life. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to mature in certain areas to get to certain points, to certain checkpoints. Let's put it that way. Certain checkpoints you won't qualify for if you haven't gotten to a certain place emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. You just can't get on those levels until you've gotten to that point. And I'm slowly but surely getting there, because there's things I've learned about myself. I'm 22 years old now. Things I didn't know about myself at 21 and 20 that I know now. And I've learned these things in the hardest moments. You know what I'm saying? Typically, you don't learn that much when things are going great. Things, that I've experienced have taught me, more so I'm learning that it's not, I'm like I said, I'm one that I like to speak and I like to let my voice be heard, but I'm learning that's not necessary all the time. I'm learning how to acknowledge that fact while maintaining my peace, because some people, we go, all right, I'm over it, I'm over it, and we're not. That can be me sometimes. I can be over it and not be, so I'm learning. I put the creepy face on just to make that example, but I could be over it and be in bed, like, so
Yeah.
I've learned that you really letting it go is a process, and that's definitely something that I've learned. And I'm so glad. I'm just so glad. I really am. I guess I can end it with this. I'm so glad that my awareness is even on to this stuff. That's a blessing in itself, because I can't tell you how many of my peers, especially the brothers. Oh goodness, I- you know, I I can't tell you how many of my fellow human brother males in the world, they're so emotions to them is like candy corn. It's like, what's the purpose? You know what I'm saying? Some people they look at candy corn like, what's the purpose of that? You know, and that's
Yes,
how.
I hate candy corn.
Uh, yeah, well, amen. So a lot of my male counterparts they just don't see the world like that. They don't see themselves. They don't see their emotional state as a relevant thing. And I didn't have to, right? But it's just the Lord had mercy on me and decided to give me a mind like that, to be able to hold a conversation such as this with you. I'm grateful for that kind of mind, because I have very, 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 very few relationships in my life, period. And so this ability to at least be aware of the journey that it's going to take in areas that I still need to go. And, the fact that I'm able to get to these points have been a sign to me that, hey, you've been given this awareness by the help of the Lord. And that's not something to take for granted, So I do my best, whoever I connect with, to have these kind of conversations with, because, it helps me filter, right? Because if people don't want to, even, we don't all have emotional baggage of the same degree, but if people don't want to, if they want to pretend like that doesn't exist, I know since I'm on this journey, it's a lifetime journey, in my opinion. Since people, if I notice that they don't want to go on that journey, or they dismiss it, I have to keep that distance to protect my journey, or else I may think, you know what? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that I just have at least the mind frame of self-awareness to those degrees. You know what I'm saying? So it's definitely something I don't take for granted.
Yes, and something that came to my mind to say as well, like as a singer and a person that plays music and even has artistic abilities that we barely be seeing, but it's okay. How do those activities help you to deal with your emotions?
Oh, tremendously. Oh my goodness. Like if I had to say to anybody that is dealing with emotional issues or emotional baggage, and they feel like they have like a 90-pound weight to their foot every day, I would say the thing I said earlier about the hobby thing, that is so critical. Like, especially, if you're in church, things like that, you may feel like, well, find a hobby. I'm telling you, prayer has helped me since I've been young. And that's something that if I didn't have prayer, I would be a psychopath. I could have been. But prayer, along with music, for me, that tool has helped me since you can't think as far back as you can think, right? So like I think I can remember, like, I'm 4 years old. I thought maybe I just existed from then in my brain, but since I existed consciously, music has just been there, and it has taught me when to use it and how to use it for certain needs. I don't just use music, and I haven't just used music and singing when I'm going through something. I use it when I'm very joyful, and it's just kind of, it's one and the same with my emotions. And because my emotions aren't just by themselves, it's manageable for me. There are times since I was young and to this very day, when I'm going through stuff emotionally, that's stuff that weighs me down. I pray, of course, and I'll sing, that one or two. I'm a hymn boy. I love hymns and new songs, but I just sing songs on repeat, hymns that songs that are nostalgic for me, that are connected to experiences. A lot of times I love to sing because that will help me to overcome those emotional hurdles. And sometimes with my particular hobbies with the singing and stuff, and it'll help me come to an answer about how I should approach a situation. And it's sort of like my reset button, so that's where my that particular hobby has really been helpful to me. It's helped me to do, you know how when your Chrome browser is freezing up, music is my refresh button. Let's put it that way, and so I love to sing like songs particularly that encourage myself about the end of a situation. Music really, really, really is helpful to me to manage my personal emotions in those ways.
Thank you, Elijah, for being here and telling us about emotional intelligence and how it has helped you develop as a person. And I hope that people that listen to this episode are encouraged to like really think through your emotions and even try to speak them out. Like how we mentioned earlier, sometimes you can say a few things to yourself. It's not crazy to talk to yourself. So don't let nobody tell you that, because I do that too. And so, yeah, if any of you have any topics that you would want to hear on the podcast, let me know. And you can contact me at moniqueharmonbrand@gmail.com. It'll also be in the description as well. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, just let me know what topics that you would like to talk about and why you think that those topics and why you think that you are the person to talk about that and what value you can bring to my listeners. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Elijah, for being here. And I hope you enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Warrior Rulebook podcast. If you like what you heard, share it with a friend and join me over at the Warrior Rulebook Podcast Insider Group on Facebook. And don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more tips on how to be resilient in this world.